She has to die so the insurance payout is higher. If she lives, she's just a financial burden. My husband's voice echoed from my phone. I was a patient scheduled for a life-saving surgery the very next day, and he was the husband who had just stolen the $20,000 meant to pay for it. With that money, he bought his mistress a designer handbag, and now they were both walking into the master bedroom of our home. Babe, what if we get caught? Relax. What can a woman lying in a hospital bed do? That night, my husband waited for my death, while I meticulously orchestrated his downfall. Sitting on the cold chair in the doctor's office, clutching my diagnosis, I felt my entire world crumble in a matter of seconds. The words spoken by the doctor under the harsh fluorescent lights sounded like a dispatch from another universe. The 3 words printed on the white paper blurred before my eyes, and a chilling numbness that started at my fingertips quickly spread through my entire body. Evelyn, can you hear me? What I'm about to say is very important. The doctor adjusted his glasses and looked at me intently. Yes, I'm listening. Please speak slowly. I'm not going anywhere, I managed to reply, moistening my dry lips. It's a malignant tumor. Both its size and location are unfavorable. We can't delay this any longer. We need to schedule the surgery as soon as possible. His voice was firm but careful. When is the earliest available date? I'll do it immediately, I asked, pressing my fingernail into the corner of the diagnosis sheet. You need to be admitted to the hospital this week, and the surgery must take place by next week at the latest. If we wait, the cancer could metastasize. Every single day is crucial, the doctor stated, reviewing my chart. All right, I'll stay. I'll prepare everything that's needed. I shoved the paperwork into my purse and placed my trembling hands on my knees. 10 years. That's how much time had passed. A decade during which I was a star performer at work, the first to arrive and the last to leave. Time I spent paying off the student loans of my husband Jason, who was 2 years younger than me. Time spent ironing his suits and packing his lunches. All of it seemed to dissolve into nothingness in the face of one piece of paper. When I opened the clinic door, Jason was waiting for me at the end of the hall with a paper coffee cup in his hand. As I walked toward him, I watched him closely. At one point, his face contorted strangely, and his eyes filled with tears as he ran up to me. Eve, what did the doctor say? Why do you have that look on your face? Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me. Jason grabbed my shoulders, asking frantically, It's cancer. They said if I don't have surgery right away, it will be incredibly dangerous. I'm going into surgery, I said, looking straight into his eyes. What? Cancer? Jesus, you scared me. How have you been taking care of yourself? Jason dropped his cup and hugged me tightly. Don't worry. You have me. I'll be with you to the very end, he whispered, rubbing my back. Jason, I'm in shock too, but I'm going to pull myself together. I won't give up. I rested my head on his shoulder. That's the spirit. This is what marriage is for, to get through things together. The care, the bills. I'll handle all of it. You don't worry about a thing. Leave the finances to me, he said tenderly, stroking my hair. I slowly lifted my head, and that was the moment. Glancing down for a split second, I felt his embrace weaken, and a strange, almost triumphant smirk flickered across his face before instantly vanishing. Jason! I called out, pulling back slightly. Huh? Why are you looking at me like that? Did I say something wrong? Jason looked visibly startled and quickly adjusted his expression. Thank you. I really want this surgery. I won't put it off. I squeezed his hand and smiled. Don't mention it. Let's go to admissions first. We need to sort out the hospital paperwork. If we're late, it's going to be a headache for me too. Jason let go of my hand, pulled out his phone, and walked ahead. Looking at his back, a strange, cold sensation crept into a corner of my heart. I saw how quickly his thumbs tapped the screen. When a reply came through, the corners of his mouth twitched upward. I saw it clearly. Who are you texting? I asked, walking up beside him. Oh, just work. I need to reorganize my schedule. With you in the hospital, I'll need to come by a lot. I'm not a free man. But I have to play the role of the devoted husband, right? Jason quickly shoved his phone into his pocket. I know you're busy, but right now, this surgery is the most important thing. I nodded, biting my lip gently. When we reached the admissions desk at Chicago Memorial, I pulled my ID from my purse and took the intake forms from the clerk. Jason stood next to me with his arms crossed, watching the paperwork, until he suddenly asked a bizarre question. Eve, what are the risks of this surgery? Does it mean it might not work? Jason pointed at a specific line on the consent form. Risks? The doctor said doing it now is the safest option. I trust him, and I'm going through with it, I replied, filling out the next few boxes. That's not what I mean. I'm asking what happens if. Well, if something goes wrong. If we spend a ton of money and the outcome is bad. Who's going to pay for all of this? Jason pressed, lowering his voice. What do you mean, if something goes wrong? Jason, this isn't the time for that. All I care about is getting out of here alive. I stopped writing and glared at him. It's not about that. Do you have some kind of insurance? I need to know, just in case. As your husband, if I don't keep track of the money, who will? Jason offered an awkward smile and rubbed his hands together. Are you talking about my life insurance? You're asking me about that right now, to my face? No, not just life insurance. You're overthinking it. Just your general policies. We're a family. If you're sick, I have to manage everything. Jason looked away and shrugged. The one we bought together a few years ago. $1.5 million in the event of my death. But that's only if I die. I don't plan on letting you get that money, I answered dryly, finishing my signature. $1.5 million. Right, got it. That's a lot. No. I just wanted to know. Jason nodded as if processing the information. I felt my fingers grip the pen tighter. A husband who brings up death and life insurance payouts while standing next to his sick wife. I felt something icy hardening in my chest, but I tried to suppress it. This was the man I had spent 10 years with. Surely not. He was just in shock and babbling nonsense. I tried to calm myself. The clerk took the documents and gave us my room number. Jason, pretending to help me with my bag, glanced at his phone screen again. I caught it again. In my private room, I changed into a hospital gown and sat on the bed. Outside the window, dusk was falling over the city. Jason sat in the chair next to me and grabbed my hand. Eve, you have to be really strong, okay? Don't complain and don't be a burden to the nurses, he said, rubbing the back of my hand. I'll be strong. I'll get through the surgery and the treatment. I'm not giving up that easily. I nodded, squeezing his hand back. At that moment, my phone vibrated briefly. A notification from my health insurance provider appeared on the screen. It clearly stated that the $20,000 out-of-pocket surgery deposit I had paid earlier was being processed. Oh, I got a text from the insurance. They're processing the deposit, I told Jason, showing him the screen. How much? Exactly how much? Let me see. Jason leaned in over the phone. It's the upfront deductible payment. We have to allocate it for the surgery and the follow-up care. I swiped the notification away and placed the phone on the nightstand. 20 grand? Wow. That's good. We'll use it for the procedure. You know what? I think it's better if I manage that money. You're sick, and stressing over finances will only make things worse. The corners of Jason's mouth curled into a smile, but his eyes gleamed strangely, as if he were looking at a total stranger. Jason, why do you have that look? Does that money really make you that happy? I asked, studying his face. What look? I don't have a look. When patients get paranoid, it just makes it harder for the people around them. Jason smiled hastily and stood up. You know, Eve, I think I'll have to sleep at the house tonight. Staying here isn't a good idea. Why? You can't stay with me for just one night? My surgery is tomorrow. I gripped the bed sheets. This recliner is too small and uncomfortable. Plus, I have to go to the office tomorrow, and I need to bring you a few things from the house. If I throw my back out, who's going to take care of you? Jason zipped up his duffel bag, making excuses. Fine, drive safely, but don't be late tomorrow morning for the pre-op preparations. I forced a smile and let go of his hand. Sure, sleep well. I'll be here in the morning. If I don't pick up, it means I'm busy. Don't blow up my phone. Jason kissed my forehead briefly and walked out of the room. Hearing the soft click of the door closing, I leaned back against the headboard and stared at the ceiling. I felt a heavy weight in my chest, and the pain in my side began to throb again. I reached for the water bottle on the nightstand, But the cap, which Jason had screwed on, refused to budge under the weak grip of my hand. As I struggled to twist it, the pain in my wrist brought tears to my eyes. I finally managed to force it open, swallowed a painkiller, and lay on my side, looking out the window. Down in the hospital parking lot, the headlights of a departing car flashed. It was Jason's SUV, but something was wrong. He was heading in the opposite direction of our home. Our condo in Lincoln Park was north of the hospital, but Jason's car turned south, toward the downtown loop where his company's corporate offices were located. I slowly picked up my phone. I remembered how a month ago, Jason had come home at 3 a.m., and 2 months ago, after a supposed late-night corporate dinner, he returned smelling of cheap, unfamiliar perfume. I stared at the smart home camera app icon on my phone screen, then locked the device and buried my face in my pillow. The instinctual fear that I shouldn't check it right now slowly crept from my toes to my head. My fingers were freezing, and the fluorescent light of the hospital room felt aggressively cold. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and closed my eyes, but the anxiety in my heart was stronger than the physical pain in my side. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, tapping softly against the glass. Despite the painkillers, I couldn't fall asleep, staring at the slowly dimming screen of the phone on my nightstand. Tomorrow was the surgery. I prayed from the bottom of my heart that everything would go well, that I could get back on my feet and have a normal dinner with Jason again. When the wall clock showed 3 a.m., a short buzz from my phone jolted me out of the drug-induced haze I had drifted into. My eyelids were heavy, but I reached for the phone. A single notification instantly woke me up. Surgery rescheduling request by medical proxy completed. The refunded deposit of $20,000 has been processed. Please confirm. I bolted upright in bed, reading the same sentence 2-3 times. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely tap the screen. I found Jason's contact and hit call. It rang endlessly, but he didn't pick up. 5 consecutive attempts yielded the same result. I slid out of bed in my hospital gown and slipped into my slippers. Dragging my IV pole behind me, I stepped out of the room. The stabbing pain in my side was sharp as a knife, but I didn't have time to care. In the distance, I saw the lights of the nurse's station. The night nurse, who had been staring at her monitor, jumped up when she saw me. "Ma'am, what are you doing out of bed at this hour?" she called out, rushing over to support me. "I got a text saying my surgery was postponed." "What is going on?" I asked, my voice trembling, showing her my phone. "Hold on, let me check the system." The nurse hurried back to her computer and began clicking her mouse. "Oh my. Ma'am, it's true. Early this morning, your proxy came in person to file a postponement request." "Who is listed as my proxy?" I asked, leaning heavily against the counter. "Jason Miller. The notes say he was here around 1 a.m. The nurse turned the monitor slightly toward me. "Can I see that document?" "Please," I begged, leaning even harder onto the desk. The nurse hesitated but finally opened a drawer and placed a printed sheet in front of me. At the bottom of the postponement form was my printed name, but that was not my signature. I always looped the last letters of my name smoothly, but this signature was jagged and scribbled. "This is not my signature." I pointed at the ink. "Excuse me?" The nurse adjusted her glasses and leaned in. "I didn't sign this." "Please compare it to the admission consent form I signed yesterday," I said, barely able to stand. The nurse pulled out yesterday's paperwork and laid them side by side. The difference was glaringly obvious, even under the harsh hospital lights. "Ma'am, I think you need to report this to the police. And the refunded deposit, from what I see here, it was wired directly to your proxy's checking account." The nurse stared at me in disbelief. "The deposit too?" I slumped against the counter. "Yes. The full amount was routed to Mr. Jason Miller's account." The nurse pointed at the screen. I stood there for a moment, trying to catch my breath. My fingers were so cold I could barely type, but I finally opened my mobile banking app. I remembered how a few days ago, Jason had borrowed my phone and banking authenticator app, claiming he needed to process some urgent corporate documents because his own digital certificate had expired. Only now was I beginning to understand what had actually happened. "Ma'am, please go back to your room and try to contact him. Maybe he had a valid reason." The nurse tried to soothe me. "Yes. Okay. I'll do that." I nodded slowly and dragged my IV pole back down the hall. Back in my room, I tried calling Jason again, to no avail. I closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed. One thought flashed through my mind. The smart home cameras I had installed in the living room and bedroom. I had set them up without Jason's knowledge under the pretext of home security and keeping an eye on our dog. They had audio recording and live view capabilities via an app. I hesitated for a second, but with trembling fingers, I tapped the icon. The living room feed buffered slowly. At first, it was pitch black. In night vision mode, I saw an empty living room. I breathed a sigh of relief, but just at that moment, I heard the faint click of the front door deadbolt unlocking. The living room lights flipped on, and the feed switched from night vision to vibrant color. I froze, clutching the phone with both hands. The door swung wide open, and Jason walked in. He wasn't alone. His arm was wrapped tightly around some woman's waist, and the two of them, clinging to each other like longtime lovers, stumbled into the living room. "Babe, your place is gorgeous. This living room is huge." The woman giggled, hanging off Jason's neck. "Of course it is. It's our home. I designed it myself." Jason shrugged nonchalantly, running his hand through her hair. I backed up against the headboard, still gripping the phone. Only when my back hit the cold wall did my legs give out, and I slid down onto the floor. I pinched the screen to zoom in on the woman's face. She was familiar. I had seen her at his company's holiday party and at a marketing department mixer. It was Sylvia, his coworker. I remembered how she had addressed me as Mrs. Miller back then, gushing over my wristwatch. "Your wife is in the hospital. Are you sure this is okay?" Sylvia kicked off her heels and slipped into my house slippers. "Relax, I took care of everything. Don't you worry about a thing." Jason wrapped his arm around her and led her to the sofa. "But I really feel bad. Your wife is sick, and here I am." Sylvia covered her mouth in mock shock and smiled. "Bad for what? There's no feeling bad between us." Jason playfully poked her cheek. I covered my mouth with my hand, suppressing a sob. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen. A tiny spark of hope still lingered. Maybe this was a drunken mistake. Maybe there was some twisted explanation. But when Sylvia wrapped her arms around Jason's neck and kissed him deeply on the lips, that last ember of hope was extinguished. Jason pulled her down onto the sofa and began unbuttoning his dress shirt. "Tonight is our night. No one is coming." He sat next to her and draped an arm over her shoulders. "But did you actually postpone your wife's surgery?" Sylvia traced a finger down his chest. "Obviously. Pushed it back 3 months. I went to the hospital early this morning and sorted it all out." Jason waved his phone in the air. "Wow, you're amazing. How did you pull that off?" Sylvia clapped her hands. "What's the big deal about forging one signature? After 10 years of marriage, I can forge my wife's name with my eyes closed." Jason smirked. I nearly dropped my phone. My hands were shaking like leaves in a hurricane. I bit my lips so hard I tasted copper. From the cold tile floor of the hospital room, using the wall for support, I slowly pulled myself up. The IV pole knocked against my arm, but that physical pain was nothing compared to the agony inside my chest. I leaned against the foot of the bed and raised the phone again. On the screen, Jason and Sylvia were clinking wine glasses and laughing, the living room of our new home brightly lit as if it belonged to them. I took a deep breath, pulled the frigid hospital air into my lungs, and exhaled slowly. The overwhelming urge to break down and sob was slowly being replaced by an icy, calculated calm. The trembling in my hands ceased. I reached for my iPad lying on the nightstand and placed it on my lap. Unlocking it, I bit my lip again. The sting was a signal that something in my brain was achieving absolute clarity. There was no time for tears. Everything Jason and Sylvia were saying and doing in my living room was broadcasting live to the small screen in my hand. I steadily tapped the screen record button on my phone. A red dot began blinking in the top corner. I stared at it, then pulled my charger out of my bag and plugged the phone in. This was going to be a long recording. I leaned deep into the pillows and propped the phone up on my lap. On the feed, Jason disappeared into the kitchen and returned carrying a large, premium shopping bag. I slowly wiped something cold from the corner of my mouth. I didn't know if it was a tear or blood, but it didn't matter anymore. Sylvia was lounging on my custom leather sofa with her legs crossed. It was a sofa my father had contributed heavily toward, and my mother had spent 2 months sourcing. Sylvia, acting like the lady of the house, with 2 of my throw pillows propped behind her, was taking selfies and texting them to someone, laughing loudly. "Babe, come here quick. Take a picture of me." Sylvia beckoned to Jason. Hold on, I've got something for you. Close your eyes and hold out your hands. Jason pulled an ornate gift bag from the console table near the door and walked back over. What is it? What is it? Show me. Sylvia bounced off the couch and tugged at his arm. I said, close your eyes. If you're naughty, you get nothing. Jason feigned strictness and hid the bag behind his back. Sylvia covered her eyes with her hands and giggled. Jason pulled a glossy, rectangular box from the bag. He opened it, and in his hands sat a brown leather handbag that instantly looked incredibly expensive, the kind you see behind glass at luxury boutiques on the Magnificent Mile. You can open them now. Jason handed it to her. Oh my God. Are you insane? Is this real? The actual new collection? Sylvia took the bag in both hands, her jaw dropping. Of course it's real. What, you think I'd get you a knockoff? You've been obsessing over this for months, Jason shrugged. How much was this? I mean, I know you can afford it, it's just… Sylvia slung the strap over her shoulder and pranced over to the hallway mirror. 20 grand. A girl like you should be wearing things like this. Stop carrying around cheap fakes, Jason said proudly. I leaned against the headboard, staring unblinkingly at the screen. When I heard the amount $20,000, I felt an icy shiver race down my spine. My fingers instinctively opened my banking app, entering my passcode. I still had the smart home feed playing in picture-in-picture mode. For a moment, I couldn't believe what I was seeing in the transaction history. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. An outgoing wire transfer from my personal account to Jason's checking account, dated yesterday at 4:30 p.m. The transaction was fully authorized using my mobile security token. I remembered Jason asking to borrow my phone for an hour, claiming his corporate VPN token was expired. I had handed him my unlocked phone. You bought all this? Sylvia asked, admiring the bag in the mirror. With my own money, whose money would I use? Jason cracked open a can of beer and boasted. I felt my grip on the phone tighten so fiercely that the metal edges bit into my palms. That single sentence lodged deep in my heart. I knew better than anyone exactly how much Jason had in his bank account. Last month, he had to take out a personal line of credit just to pay off his credit card debt, and now he was saying with my own money, "Babe, pour me another glass of wine. Let's set the mood." Sylvia sat back on the couch, the handbag still on her shoulder. Give me a sec. I'll grab some snacks too. The wife prepped some fruit yesterday. It's in the fridge. Jason opened the refrigerator door. I watched, completely numb, as Jason pulled a Tupperware container out of the fridge. It was the fruit I had meticulously washed and sliced yesterday morning before heading to the hospital, so he would have healthy snacks for dinner. I had cut them while enduring stabbing pains in my abdomen. I had to stop twice because my wrists hurt so much. Oh, your wife is handy. She cuts fruit nicely. Sylvia speared a piece of apple with a fork. She's resourceful, makes good money, runs the house well too. Jason poured the wine. So if you have such a great wife, why are you seeing me? Sylvia poked him in the ribs. A wife is a wife and you are you. She makes good money, but she's not as affectionate as you are. Jason placed his hand on her thigh. I bit my lip again, right in the same spot that had already bled. But the physical pain was useful. Without it, I might have hurled the phone across the room. On the screen, they clinked glasses. I recalled how he had come home at dawn yesterday in his suit, claiming he was at a client dinner. The strange perfume, the phone constantly placed face down, the hour-long bathroom trips. The puzzle pieces locked together perfectly. I should have seen it earlier, or maybe I did know, but refused to admit it. I mourned the 10 years I had wasted, the years spent paying off his debts, the years I handed his mother generous cash envelopes every Christmas. Babe, is your wife really going to be in the hospital for a long time? Sylvia asked, swirling her wine. A long time. I postponed the surgery, so it'll drag out for at least 3 months. Jason chewed on an apple slice. And what if she doesn't take her meds? What if something suddenly happens to her? Sylvia pressed a finger to her lips, feigning concern. It will happen. What difference does it make? Jason replied with a crooked smile. Sylvia burst into laughter and shoved his shoulder playfully. Jason laughed along with her and drained his glass. What exactly is wrong with her anyway? Something in her stomach? Sylvia asked, pouring herself more wine. Yeah, the stomach. Doctor said it needed immediate surgery. Jason kept chewing. But you're the one giving her the pills at the hospital, right? What if you just… Forget to give them to her. Sylvia looked at him pointedly. She won't take them anyway. She said her hands are so swollen she can't even twist the cap off her pill bottles. Jason shrugged. My hands turned to ice. I remembered the water bottle from last night. Jason knew better than anyone that my wrists were weak, and I struggled to open bottles. The fact that he had purposefully screwed the cap on as tight as possible became horrifyingly clear. You're awful. Your poor wife. Sylvia covered her mouth and giggled. Poor her. She needs to go so we can finally live in peace. Jason raised his glass. Sylvia tapped her glass against his, the crystal chime ringing clearly through my phone's speaker. At that moment, I set the phone down on the bed and buried my face in my hands. I curled into a ball, but I didn't cry. The tears were trapped somewhere deep inside. With every breath, only a quiet, hollow gasp escaped my lips. Outside, the rain was coming down harder. Listening to its rhythm, I slowly steadied my breathing. 1, 2, 3. With each inhale, I felt the cold air freeze my lungs, and when it reached my heart, the gasping stopped. I uncovered my face and picked up the phone again. I wiped my eyes and ran my fingers through my hair. I grabbed my iPad, made sure the red recording dot was still blinking, and opened my Google Drive. I created a new folder. I hesitated for a second before typing the name, Evidence. I stared at the word. I felt something solidifying in my chest. It wasn't heartbreak or rage. It was a cold, calculating detachment I had never experienced before. Logic took the wheel, and the trembling ceased completely. On the screen, Jason stood up, pulling Sylvia by the hand. They were heading toward the bedroom. Our bedroom! I switched the feed to the bedroom camera. The frame covered my vanity table and the headboard of our bed. I hit record again. The red dot flashed. I checked the charging cable and rested my hands on my lap. The look on my face in the dim hospital light was probably one Jason had never seen. As the bedroom camera loaded, the closed door opened from the outside, and the lights flicked on. Jason pulled Sylvia inside. Both of them, slightly swaying from the wine, looked around the room. Sylvia still had the $20,000 bag on her shoulder and her wine glass in her hand. Wow, babe, this is your master bedroom? Sylvia cooed, tiptoeing in. Yeah, come on in. Make yourself at home. Jason sat on the edge of the bed and waved her over. Are you sure? This is your wife's bed. Sylvia put a hand to her chest, pretending to hesitate. What wife? It's my bed. The wife is in the hospital and she's not coming back. Jason set his glass on my nightstand. Sylvia laughed loudly and walked further in. Her eyes immediately landed on my vanity. I felt my grip tighten again. It was a solid oak vanity my mother had bought me for our first wedding anniversary. She had driven to the furniture store 3 times just to pick out the perfect one. In the top drawer sat my grandmother's vintage jewelry box, holding the diamond and pearl earrings I wore on my wedding day. Oh wow, your wife has a ton of expensive makeup. Sylvia sat on the stool. She drops a fortune on that crap, Jason replied, kicking his shoes off and lying back on the bed. Sylvia picked up a bottle of Chanel perfume Jason had bought me for my last birthday and spritzed her wrist. She looked in the mirror, thoroughly pleased with herself. I'm taking this. Your wife's perfume smells expensive. Sylvia dropped the bottle into her new leather bag. Take it. She's not going to use it anyway. Jason smiled, staring at the ceiling. That one sentence made my fingers go numb. She's not going to use it anyway. The sheer gravity of those words pinned me to the mattress. I had to take a deep breath. Sylvia pulled open the top drawer and started rummaging through it. My grandmother's jewelry box ended up in her hands. She popped it open without a shred of hesitation. These are real pearls and diamonds. Where does your wife get all this? Sylvia held the earrings up to her ears, admiring herself in the mirror. Her mom gave them to her for the wedding, Jason answered, eyes glued to his phone. Geez, these must be worth a lot. Maybe I'll take these too. Sylvia toyed with the earrings, glancing back at Jason. Take them. You're going to be the lady of the house soon anyway. You can use whatever of hers you want. Jason didn't even look up. I bit my lip again, watching my grandmother's heirloom being desecrated by this woman. I felt a piercing agony, but looking at the blinking red recording dot, I decided to weaponize that pain. Sylvia opened the second drawer and pulled out an amber prescription bottle. They were my heavy-duty painkillers. Babe, what's this? Pill bottles? Sylvia shook the plastic container. The wife's painkillers. For the pain in her side. Jason set his phone down. Tell me the truth. Do you really want your wife to die? Sylvia asked, twirling the bottle in her fingers. What kind of question is that? Jason suddenly sat up and smirked. I mean, she's in the hospital. Surgery's canceled. She might take a turn for the worse. Then we'd have real peace. Sylvia looked him dead in the eyes. That's true. It's better if she just goes quickly rather than lying around helpless. It'd be cleaner. Jason shrugged. And how much would you get? From the life insurance? Sylvia slowly set the bottle on the nightstand. $1 million. Plus the group policy through my job, maybe another $500,000. 1.5 total. Jason held up his fingers. Sylvia whistled in admiration. Jason smiled smugly, and they both started laughing as if they had just told a hilarious joke. And she's just going to naturally decline, lying in that bed? Sylvia sat on the edge of the mattress and rested her hand on his leg. Postponing the surgery ensures she'll naturally decline. Give it a month or two, and nature will take its course. I won't even have to get my hands dirty. Jason shrugged again. Really? You're going to be rich. Sylvia patted his knee. I am. The condo will be mine, and you'll finally get to be the lady of the house. Jason stroked the back of her hand. At that moment, their voices sounded distant, like they were transmitting from an alien world. My ears were ringing, and my hands were freezing, but I turned the volume on my phone all the way up so I wouldn't miss a single syllable. Right then, Jason's phone rang. He put it on speaker. Hi, Mom. Jason tossed the phone onto the bed. Jason, where are you? Why aren't you at the hospital? The sharp voice of my mother-in-law, Barbara, filled the bedroom. Mom, I'm at home. Sylvia is here too, Jason answered casually. Good, good. What's the point of sitting by her bed? You'll just waste your life. Barbara's voice was crystal clear over the camera's microphone. Hearing her voice made my palms sweat. This was the same mother-in-law to whom I gave generous checks every holiday. The one who had practically wept when she first heard about my cancer diagnosis. Hi, Barbara. Sylvia leaned down toward the phone. Oh, Sylvia, you're there too. You are the perfect match for my Jason. Barbara's tone instantly warmed. Thank you, Barbara. I'll take good care of him. Sylvia smiled. Listen, Jason, you made sure they canceled her surgery, right? Barbara pivoted back to business. Yeah, Mom, it's all taken care of. Pushed back 3 months. She'll be gone on her own by then, Jason said, lying back on the pillows. Good, good. My smart boy handled everything perfectly. Barbara sounded immensely satisfied. And what are we doing with the insurance payout? Jason asked, staring at the ceiling. When you get the money, you wire half to me, and with the rest, you and Sylvia can buy a nice new place. Sell that condo and get something bigger in the suburbs. Barbara laid out the plan without missing a beat. Of course, Barbara. I'll be very economical, Sylvia chimed in, clasping her hands. Yes, Sylvia. She needs to go quickly so you two can start your new life. My Jason suffered for 10 years because of her. Barbara scoffed. I watched the screen. Jason and Sylvia were lounging on my bed, laughing and chatting with my mother-in-law. The image burned itself into my retinas. For 10 years, I bought her expensive birthday gifts. I threw her a massive 70th birthday party. When she complained about her joints, I paid for her premium supplements. And now, she referred to me as simply she so casually. To think I might have called her tomorrow to ask how she was doing. All right, Mom, I gotta go. Sylvia's waiting. Jason ended the call with a grin. Okay, go have fun. Take care of Sylvia. The line went dead. They were alone in the bedroom again. They locked eyes and burst out laughing. Jason pulled Sylvia down onto the mattress. I slowly set my phone down. My hands were ice cold, and my hospital gown was soaked in cold sweat. But the inferno that had been raging in my chest suddenly went dead calm. The time for tears was over. The time for trembling over a betrayal was over. I rested my hands on my lap and stabilized my breathing. The love I had poured into Jason for 10 years. The respect I had for my mother-in-law. The grueling overtime hours I worked to afford that condo. I decided to box it all up and throw it away. I wiped my mouth. My hands were no longer shaking. When I picked the phone back up, my face was as placid and cold as a frozen lake. I reached for the iPad. I had work to do. I set the phone and the tablet side by side on my nightstand and sank deep into the pillows. The IV pole wobbled, but I just steadied it gently. A few hours ago, I was shaking with terror in a doctor's office, and now I couldn't even believe how utterly calm I felt. I verified the red recording dot and opened my evidence folder. The living room clips were already uploaded, Jason handing Sylvia the designer bag, them clinking glasses and talking about my death. I added the bedroom recordings. The moment Sylvia explicitly asked about the life insurance, Jason flashing his fingers signaling $1.5 million. The speakerphone conversation with Barbara. Every single file was safely synced to the cloud. Next came the financial paper trail. I took a screenshot of my banking app showing the $20,000 wire transfer from my account to Jason's. It showed the timestamp, the exact amount, and the recipient's name. I saved it into a subfolder named Embezzlement. Next to it, I created a folder named Forgery, where I uploaded the photo of the surgery cancellation request with his fake signature next to my real one. I dug a slightly crumpled business card out of my purse. I had gotten it 3 years ago from Detective Mark Jenkins with the Chicago PD Major Crimes Unit, back when he helped me handle a severe stalker client from work. I punched in his direct cell number and hovered my finger over the call button. It was 3:40 a.m. I took a deep breath and dialed. He picked up on the second ring. Jenkins. Detective Jenkins, this is Evelyn Miller. 3 years ago, you helped me with a stalking case. I don't know if you remember me. I spoke slowly and clearly. Evelyn. Yeah, I remember. What's going on at this hour? His voice immediately lost its sleepiness. Detective, there is an attempted murder currently taking place in my home. I said it without a single tremor in my voice. Dead silence on the line. I waited. Hold on. Repeat that. His voice turned razor sharp. I am currently admitted at Chicago Memorial Hospital. My husband secretly forged my signature to cancel my life-saving cancer surgery and stole my $20,000 medical deposit. He is currently at my house with his mistress, discussing how I will die without the surgery, so he can collect $1.5 million in life insurance. I have everything recorded on live video. Ma'am, which hospital are you at? I could hear him typing furiously. Chicago Memorial, 8th floor, room 805. Home address. I gave him the exact address in Lincoln Park, including the unit number and the lobby gate code, flawlessly. Evelyn, how can we access this footage? Can you send it to us? I'm emailing you a secure drive link right now. The living room and bedroom videos with crystal clear audio are in the cloud. I'm also attaching screenshots of the $20,000 wire fraud and the forged hospital document. One more thing. This isn't just a domestic dispute. Do you consider the intentional denial of life-saving medical care for a massive financial payout to be attempted murder? Absolutely, ma'am. That's reckless endangerment at the very least, escalating to attempted homicide for financial gain. I've got units in the district. I'm rolling out with a major crimes team right now. Do not hang up. You need to give me real-time updates. I'll stay on the line. Pinning the phone between my shoulder and my ear, I picked up the iPad. Over the line, I could hear Jenkins barking orders over the police radio. Priority call, suspected attempted homicide in progress, major crimes rolling, requesting uniform backup from the 18th district. I stared at the camera feed. Jason had walked over to my closet. He opened it, revealing a small digital wall safe. He knelt down and started punching in the keypad. Detective, my husband is opening the safe in the master bedroom. The original copies of my life insurance policies and the deed to the condo are inside. I relayed calmly. Copy that. Cruisers are pulling onto your street. We'll be at your door in 4 minutes. Keep your eyes on the feed. Understood. Jason hit the final digit. Sylvia walked over to him. Babe, what's in there? The life insurance policies and the condo deed. The wife locked everything in here. How did you know the code? Our wedding anniversary. What else would she use? He scoffed. I felt the corner of my mouth twitch. Our anniversary was nothing more than a passcode to him. I wasn't surprised or angry. I just filed it away in my memory. Detective, the safe is open. Where are you? We just breached the lobby gate. We're in the elevator, heading to the 4th floor. 60 seconds to your door. Stay exactly where you are. My partner is watching the live feed from the link you sent. I sank back into the pillows. I felt a profound, chilling peace. I rested my hands on my lap and watched the screen. Jason and Sylvia were laughing as they pulled the thick manila envelopes from the safe. They had no idea what they were actually reaching for. And that was perfect. The deeper they dug their own graves, the harder the fall would be. Detective, they're pulling the policies out. They're talking about the payout again. We are stacking on your door. On the screen, Jason and Sylvia were entirely engrossed in the documents. Behind them, out in the hallway, the faint sound of heavy boots faded into silence. Through the camera's microphone, I caught the incredibly faint electronic beep of the front door's smart lock keypad being bypassed. I held my breath. Click. The heavy thud of the deadbolt echoing through the condo was deafening. I quickly switched the iPad to the living room camera. The front door violently swung open, and Detective Jenkins burst in wearing a black tactical vest, followed by 4 plainclothes major crimes detectives and several uniformed Chicago PD officers who instantly fanned out across the living room with weapons drawn. Hearing the commotion, Jason dropped the insurance folders and leaped to his feet. "Who's there? What is this?" he yelled, his voice cracking with panic. "Babe, what's that noise?" "Someone broke in." Sylvia, pale as a ghost, grabbed his arm. Jason stumbled out of the bedroom and came face to face with the barrel of Detective Jenkins's Glock. "Jason Miller! Chicago PD! Let me see your hands! Do not move!" Jenkins's voice boomed like thunder through the condo. Jason swayed, dropping the beer can he was holding. It hit the hardwood, spraying foam everywhere. Sylvia cowered in the corner by the vanity, clutching her new $20,000 designer bag to her chest. "Officer! Detective! What is this about?" Jason threw his hands up in surrender, trembling violently. "Hands on your head. Turn around." Jenkins stepped closer, holstering his weapon as uniform officers moved in. "Detective, please. This is a huge misunderstanding. My wife probably called you because we had a fight. It's a domestic issue. We can sort this out." Jason tried to force a panicked smile. "A fight? So after a fight, you forge her signature to cancel her cancer surgery?" Jenkins grabbed Jason's arm and spun him around, slamming him against the wall. Jason's face lost all its color. "What forged signature?" "I didn't do anything like that." Jenkins pulled out his phone and played the video I had just sent him, the clip of Jason and Sylvia in the bedroom, laughing about the insurance money and how nature would take its course. When Jason heard his own voice echoing in the living room, his knees buckled, and he sagged toward the floor. Uniforms held him up. "It was a joke. We were just drunk and joking around," he pleaded, hyperventilating. "You wired $20,000 out of her account as a joke? You forged medical documents as a joke?" Jenkins flashed a printed screenshot of the surgical cancellation form, showing Jason's scribbled signature next to my real one. Jason was struck completely dumb, staring blankly at the paper. His eyes darted toward the bedroom, where Sylvia was sobbing hysterically on the floor. "Sylvia, stand up and drop the bag. Now," Jenkins commanded. "I don't know anything. He told me to come over." Sylvia shrieked, clutching the bag tighter to her chest. "You don't know anything? You were just advising him on how to let his wife die naturally?" Jenkins played the second video, when Sylvia heard her own voice saying, "She might take a turn for the worse. Then we'd have real peace." She collapsed onto the floor. "He made me say that! I was just doing what he wanted!" she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at Jason. "What? You're the one who brought up the insurance first? You said you wanted her dead?" Jason whipped his head around, screaming back at her. "What the hell are you talking about? You bragged about the $1.5 million. You're the one who canceled the surgery." Jenkins gave a brief nod. 2 officers threw Jason against the wall and violently ratcheted handcuffs onto his wrists. Another officer marched into the bedroom, yanked Sylvia to her feet, and cuffed her. The designer bag tumbled to the floor, spilling my stolen Chanel perfume and my grandmother's earrings across the hardwood. "Jason Miller, Sylvia, whatever your last name is, you are both under arrest for wire fraud, felony forgery, embezzlement, and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Jenkins rattled off their Miranda rights. The handcuffs clicked loudly. "Detective, my wife planned this, didn't she? She's a psychotic bitch. She set us up." Jason bellowed, thrashing against the officers. "Your wife captured everything on her own security cameras inside a property she solely owns. She provided us with the wire transfers from her own bank account. If she planned this, All it means is she let you freely commit felony fraud, embezzlement, and attempted homicide on tape. Jenkins stared at him with absolute disgust. Jason went completely silent. His shoulders slumped in total defeat. I watched the scene unfold on my iPad as they hurled insults at each other. I felt nothing at all. Jenkins looked directly into the living room camera lens and gave a sharp nod. I nodded back at the screen, even though he couldn't see me. Crime scene techs began bagging evidence, the insurance policies, the condo deed, my jewelry. As they were dragged out of the apartment, Jason and Sylvia were still screaming at each other. I slowly put the iPad down, leaned my head back, and stared at the hospital ceiling. The fluorescent lights didn't bother me anymore. The red recording dot on my phone was finally gone. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and took a massive cleansing breath. Outside the window, the rain was stopping, and the first faint hues of dawn were breaking over the Chicago skyline. I had saved the last file. Now, I just needed to deal with my mother-in-law and sign a new surgical consent form. By 5 a.m., Jason and Sylvia were hauled out of the condo building. Neighbors, woken by the sirens, were peering out their doors. Whispers echoed up and down the hallways. I set my phone aside. The pain in my side had returned, but it felt manageable now. Distant. I was wiping my forehead with a tissue when the day shift nurse peeked into the room. "Are you all right, ma'am? I heard you on the phone earlier." "Yes, I'm fine. I called the police." Something came up. "Could I please get a proxy revocation form and register a new medical power of attorney?" "Of course." "What happened to Mr. Miller?" "I reported him for forging my signature to cancel my surgery and embezzling my medical funds. He was just arrested." The nurse stared at me, wide-eyed, then gave a firm nod and walked out. "I'll get the paperwork immediately." I dialed my sister, Katie. "Katie, you need to come to Chicago Memorial right now. I need to name you as my medical proxy." "Eve, what's going on? Where is Jason?" "In a holding cell. Get here, and I'll tell you everything." My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Jenkins. Both suspects booked into separate holding cells. The mother-in-law, Barbara, has been brought in for questioning. "Please focus on your surgery. We will handle the rest." I replied, "Thank you, Detective. I'll come down to the precinct to thank you personally once I recover." At that exact moment, down at the district station, Sylvia was bawling her eyes out in an interrogation room, pinning the entire master plan on Jason. In the next room, Jason was still aggressively insisting it was all a drunken joke. Jenkins simply opened his laptop and played the bedroom video. When Jason's own voice casually discussing his wife's natural decline filled the interrogation room, Jason shut his mouth and buried his face in his shackled hands. Minutes later, Barbara stormed into the precinct, shrieking, "Where is my son? What have you done to him?" "This is all my psychotic daughter-in-law's fault." Jenkins calmly sat her down in an interview room and played the audio of her phone call, hearing her own voice meticulously plotting the division of the life insurance money and agreeing that I needed to go quickly drained the blood from her face. She sat paralyzed in her chair. "Barbara Miller, you are being formally charged with conspiracy to commit murder," Jenkins said, snapping the laptop shut. Back at the hospital, Katie arrived with red, puffy eyes. "Eve, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Katie. It's all over." I squeezed her hand. An hospital administrator arrived with the legal forms. I took the pen. My hand didn't shake once. In the box for the new medical proxy, I printed Catherine Miller. Then, on the surgical consent form, in the space for the patient's signature, I signed my name. I made sure to loop the letters perfectly, just the way I always did. "Your surgery is back on the schedule for first thing tomorrow morning." The administrator smiled warmly. "Thank you." The next morning, as I was rolled on a gurney toward the OR, I watched the ceiling lights pass by overhead. I felt a profound sense of peace. For the first time in 10 years, I had signed a document that mattered only to me, for my own survival. As the anesthesia hit me under the glaring surgical lamps, I drifted off to sleep. My last conscious thought was the image of my own signature. I woke up in the recovery room. Katie and my tearful mother were standing over me. "Eve, you're awake." "The surgery was a complete success," Katie whispered, stroking my arm. "My sweet Evelyn, you're alive. You came back to us." My mom gently stroked my hand. "Mom, don't cry. Everything is going to be fine." I managed a weak smile. 3 weeks later, I was doing laps up and down the hospital corridor every day, and my mom was bringing me homemade chicken noodle soup. With every passing day, I grew stronger. Before I was discharged, my attorney visited me in my room. I signed the divorce filings, the motion to freeze Jason's assets, and the documents proving my sole ownership of the condo. Evelyn, we should also file for a permanent restraining order, just to be safe. Yes. File it against him and his mother. When I finally returned home to Lincoln Park, Jason's belongings were exactly where he had left them. I pulled out a box of heavy-duty trash bags. I'll help. Katie rolled up her sleeves. Thank you. Together, we threw away everything. His custom suits, his cologne, his shoes, his books. Even our wedding album went straight into the black plastic. I found the luxury watch and the engraved fountain pen I had bought him for our wedding. Straight into the trash. The police had already returned my grandmother's jewelry to me. When 5 massive trash bags were sitting by the front door, Katie hugged me tight. This is just the beginning. I replaced the furniture. I bought a new sofa, a new king-sized bed, and completely rearranged the living room. The whole condo smelled of lavender, citrus, and fresh lilies. In a home wiped completely clean of Jason's existence, I slept soundly for the first time in years. The criminal trial moved swiftly. The digital evidence was insurmountable. Jason's defense attorney tried to have the security footage thrown out under Illinois two-party consent laws, but since the cameras were overtly placed in my own private residence for security purposes, and the crime involved a felony threat to life, the motion was denied. The forensic handwriting analysis confirmed the forgery, and the bank wire logs were indisputable. The audio recordings of them plotting to let me die and the mother-in-law's conspiracy were played for the jury. Jason was convicted and sentenced to hard time in a state penitentiary for wire fraud, forgery, embezzlement, and attempted murder. Sylvia, as a co-conspirator, was slapped with massive civil damages, ensuring her wages would be garnished for the rest of her life, and she received a plea deal probation. Barbara, indicted for conspiracy to commit murder, became an absolute pariah. When the audio of her phone call leaked, she was ostracized by our entire extended family and all her suburban neighbors. Both Jason and Sylvia were immediately fired from their corporate jobs. The day after the sentencing, I stood by the bay windows of my condo, soaking in the sunlight. The trees in the park were blooming with bright green spring leaves. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen. I sat in my armchair and took the first sip. The memories of the past few months flickered through my mind, but they no longer carried any pain. It was just the past, a closed chapter I had written the ending to myself. That afternoon, my parents and Katie came over. I cooked a massive roast dinner for them. My Evelyn made all this herself. My mom wiped away a happy tear. Mom, no more crying. Only good days from now on. I placed my hand over hers. My oldest girl has truly come into her own. My dad cleared his throat gruffly as he sat down at the head of the table. Eve, you are a total badass. I am so damn proud of you, Katie said, raising her glass. Katie, thank you. For everything. After dinner, we sat in the living room drinking tea. My mom stroked my hair. Evelyn, from now on, you live for yourself. I will, Mom. I promise. When they left and I was alone, I cleaned up the kitchen. I washed the dishes and threw open the windows, letting the crisp spring breeze sweep through the house. I got into my new bed. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Jenkins. Evelyn, all the legal proceedings are officially closed. Take care of yourself. I typed back. Thank you, Detective. Because of you, I have a life to take care of. Outside my window, the city lights twinkled against the night sky. I closed my eyes. The longest, darkest winter of my life had finally come to an end, and the second spring of my life was just beginning. I woke up early the next morning. Sunlight was pouring into the living room, and birds were singing outside. I made myself another cup of coffee. The Evelyn who had trembled in terror in that doctor's office was gone. In her place stood a woman greeting a new day with a coffee mug in hand, standing firmly on her own 2 feet. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Good morning, Eve. Have a beautiful day. Stay healthy and happy. I smiled and texted back. Good morning, Mom. I love you. The warmth of the coffee spread through my chest. Evelyn's second life was beginning, bathed in the glow of the spring sun. Dear readers, the knife that cuts the deepest never comes from the hand of a stranger, but from the hand of the person closest to you. Evelyn's story teaches us one crucial lesson. The person who, in their darkest moment of betrayal, refuses to cry, but instead stands up and fights for their own survival, will always live to see the sunrise of their second life. I wish all of you who silently endure the struggles of everyday life that your days are brightened by the warmth of a spring sun. If you listen to this story to the very end, please leave a comment saying, "Listened."